Welcome to this Tybootha presentation, where we will review one of James Michael's latest book, The Labyrinth, Wandering to the Center. This one's been getting some buzz, and I'm really curious to dig into it.
Yeah, me too. And James Michael, his background is, well, it's quite unique, isn't it? I think that really shapes how he approaches the whole subject.
Absolutely. So before we dive right into the book, The Labyrinth, maybe let's get a sense of the author. The at the author section says he was born in Evanston, Illinois,
Right.
and raised in the Swedish Covenant Church of America, which, maybe isn't the first thing you'd connect with labyrinths.
That's a good point, yeah. It suggests maybe an early grounding in community, perhaps a structured faith, which could be an interesting backdrop for his later explorations into more mystical areas.
He then went on to study quite a mix: political science, Scandinavian studies, and law. USC, University of Wisconsin, even Lund University in Sweden. That's
Hmm.
quite a range.
It really is. It points to a broad curiosity, doesn't it? Pelici might give him insights into social structures, Scandinavian studies into specific traditions, and law. Well, maybe a certain way of thinking, analysis.
So he's likely coming at this from several angles.
I think so, yeah. A multifaceted view.
And what really jumped out at me was that his interest in the mystic side of things, it actually started with his own meditation practice. Self-taught, it says.
Right, like an inner experience opened the door to these traditions.
Exactly. It suggests a personal experiential connection, doesn't it? Not just academic.
Definitely. Which probably gives his writing on the labyrinth as a meditative tool a certain depth.
He mentions getting into the cloud of unknowing through William Menninger, and that really clicked with his meditation.
Ah, classic text.
Yeah. And after that, wow, he explored so many different kinds of meditation: Vipassana, Zen, Tibetan Buddhist, Indian Vedic, Jewish, Sufi, even neuroscience-informed stuff and other Western Christian forms.
That's an incredible breadth. It speaks to a really thorough investigation of contemplative practice, maybe even comparing different approaches.
Yeah, seeing the common threads, perhaps.
Exactly. And the unique aspects of how labyrinths fit in.
He also lists some interesting influences: William Blake, Neville Goddard, Alan Watts, Thomas Merton, Rupert Sheldrake. That's quite a group.
Hmm. It is a mix of like visionary art, mysticism, philosophy, even some more fringe scientific thinking with Sheldrake.
So it suggests his exploration of labyrinths probably isn't just historical. It likely goes deeper into philosophical or symbolic territory.
I'd agree. It hints at looking beyond the surface.
And now he lives in Sweden, teaches meditation, leads labyrinth walks, retreats, and he's the WCCM contact for Sweden, the World Community for Christian Meditation.
So it's very much a lived practice for him. Teaching, community work.
Not just theory, it's grounded in real-world experience.
That practical side must really inform his writing.
For anyone interested, his other books are listed on his Amazon author page. It's Amazon.com author James Michael. Looks like he's written on various things.
Yeah, it definitely paints a picture of someone deeply engaged, bringing a lot of different threads together for this topic.
Okay, so let's really get into it. Let's start our deep dive into The Labyrinth. Wandering to the center, the table of contents looks pretty thorough.
Hmm.
Introduction, then origins, classification, symbolism, the experience, sacred spaces across time and cultures, healing power, construction, contemporary uses, and then reflection, conclusion, resources. It covers a lot of ground.
Seems like a logical path moving from the basics in history towards, how we experience and use them today.
The intro starts with that great Tolkien quote, "Not all those who wander are lost."
Ah, yes. Perfect for labyrinths.
It really frames it perfectly, doesn't it? Labyrinth walking isn't aimless, it's intentional discovery.
It sets the right tone immediately, reframing wandering as purposeful.
And critically, right at the start, he clarifies the difference between labyrinths and mazes, which, let's face it, people often mix up.
Oh, constantly, yeah.
So, mazes, puzzles, dead ends, multiple routes, designed to challenge you, maybe confuse you.
Right, they test your problem solving. There's a right way and wrong ways.
Exactly. But labyrinths, just one continuous path. Into the center, back out again. No choices, no dead ends.
That's the crucial difference.
Yeah.
It takes away the pressure of figuring it out.
Yeah.
You just follow.
And he puts it so well. You get lost in a maze, but you can find yourself in a labyrinth.
That's a really key distinction. It highlights the different psychological space each one creates. One external, one internal, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. The labyrinth becomes this metaphor for life's journey. Twists, turns, sometimes you feel far away, sometimes close.
But the center is always there.
Right. But it's the journey along that path, the reflection, maybe letting things go. That's where the meaning is.
The single path mirrors that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Life isn't always linear. Progress isn't always straight ahead.
The intro also gives a little taste of the history, Minoan Crete, Chartres Cathedral, and the different uses. Pilgrimage, prayer, healing, meditation, even just fun.
It shows how versatile this ancient form really is, how it's adapted across centuries and cultures.
So the book promises to explore all that history, symbolism, myths, sacred spaces, modern uses, basically making the case that wandering can lead you forward.
It's a really compelling setup for the rest of the book. Makes you want to wander through the chapters.
Okay, chapter 1, the origins of labyrinths. This takes us way back. Mythology, rituals, early spiritual stuff.
Right, starting with the big one, the Minotaur.
Yeah, the Knossos labyrinth myth. It's discussed as this early symbolic thing, danger, transformation, overcoming darkness, even if the actual place wasn't, a labyrinth in the strict sense we just defined.
But the myth itself has had such a huge impact, hasn't it? That idea of confronting something monstrous within a confusing structure, it shapes how we think about labyrinths, even now.
Then he gets into the archaeology. And this is fascinating, the labyrinth pattern showing up in ancient cultures that weren't really connected. Like Minoan examples from around 2000 BC. Not huge structures, but on pottery, coins.
Which suggests the symbol itself was important, yeah. Part of their visual language, maybe their beliefs, even without a giant labyrinth building.
And then there's the Egyptian labyrinth at Hawara. Herodotus wrote about it, apparently amazed. Thousands of rooms, massive scale.
Yeah, the descriptions are incredible. Even if we don't know exactly what it was, ceremonial complex, administrative center, it was clearly monumental and probably meant to impress, maybe even confuse.
The scale is hard to grasp, and it wasn't just the Mediterranean. We see them in pre-Columbian cultures, too, like the Nazca lines in Peru. Some have labyrinthine shapes. And the Tahano Odom man-in-the-maze symbol from North America, that one's so direct, isn't it? Life's journey, choices, leading to spiritual fulfillment at the center.
It's a beautiful, concise representation of a whole worldview, encapsulated in that labyrinth form. Really powerful.
The chapter also looks at how they were used in rituals, like in Greece and Rome, maybe part of initiation rites, symbolizing a journey through chaos to clarity.
Makes sense. Using the physical act of walking the pattern to represent an internal transformation, like a symbolic death and rebirth.
And those turf labyrinths in Northern Europe, used in festivals, maybe linked to seasons, fertility, renewal.
Connecting the labyrinth pattern to the cycles of nature and agriculture.
And then later you get the spiritual use in medieval times, like Chartres, the symbolic pilgrimage idea for people who couldn't travel to Jerusalem, a focus for prayer right there in the cathedral.
So chapter 1 really lays the groundwork, showing these deep ancient roots across so many different cultures and uses. It wasn't just one thing.
Right. Okay, chapter 2, understanding labyrinth classification. This one leans on Jeff Soward's work, apparently. It breaks down the different designs, starting with classical labyrinth.
Yeah, the seven-circuit one,
Right.
the one you often see associated with the Cretan myth.
Circular or square? What's the deal with that specific seven-circuit pattern?
Well, the way the path unfolds. It takes you close to the center, then far away again, before finally leading you in. It sort of mimics that feeling of, life's ups and downs, the indirect path to insight or self-discovery.
Okay, that makes sense. Then Roman labyrinths, more geometric, often mosaics, in villas and public spaces.
Right, maybe a bit less. Purely ritualistic,
Right.
more integrated into daily life perhaps, decorative, but also spaces for contemplation, maybe just walking and talking.
Like a garden feature, almost.
Could be, yeah, part of the social fabric.
Then the medieval ones. Big resurgence in Christian churches, Chartres being the prime example, 11 circuit.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And deeply symbolic within that context.
What was the main spiritual idea there?
It was really seen as the path to salvation, or a symbolic pilgrimage to Jerusalem, like we mentioned. Walking it was an act of devotion, a way to reflect on faith, the journey through life's trials towards God, all within the cathedral.
And the complex pattern itself maybe represented the spiritual life.
Exactly. Or even the cosmos, the connection between the divine and the human.
Then we jump to contemporary labyrinths, showing up in hospitals, gardens, therapy settings, often using natural materials. Why the comeback now, do you think?
I think there's a real hunger for contemplative practices today, isn't there? And people are seeing the labyrinth's potential for stress relief, reflection, emotional processing, maybe outside of traditional religious context sometimes too.
And the nature connection feels important too.
Definitely. Using outdoor spaces for healing and reflection.
The chapter mentions some types too, like the Baltic wheel and the Hindu chakra vyuha.
Right, just showing how the basic idea adapts. The Baltic wheel connects to older European traditions, agriculture. The Chakravyuha maps onto the Hindu energy centers, the chakras.
Yeah.
Shows the flexibility of the symbol.
So understanding these types, it shows the diversity.
Yeah, diversity and continuity. The core idea of the winding path persists, but it gets interpreted and expressed in so many culturally specific ways across time. It connects us to this long, long tradition.
Makes sense. Okay, chapter 3 gets into the labyrinth as a symbol, really digging into the meaning. It starts with the spiritual journey, idea transformation, self-discovery.
Yeah, the path itself mirroring our inner world, the twists and turns reflecting challenges, desires, fears.
And walking it becomes a way to engage with that.
Exactly, a physical way to embody that inner journey. The turns force you to change direction, maybe see things differently. Reaching the center could be about finding clarity or connection.
So it's more than just a pattern on the ground, it's a tool for growth.
A tool for introspection, yeah. Personal growth, spiritual awakening, however you want to frame it.
Then it talks about universal meanings across cultures, things like protection the labyrinth as a safe, sacred space.
Like warding off bad energy, providing a refuge.
And pilgrimage, again, the journey mattering as much as the destination, fostering reflection.
And community, often, walking together.
And that theme of death and rebirth keeps popping up, overcoming trials, leading to renewal, like shedding an old skin.
These themes seem almost archetypal, don't they? Appearing again and again in different contexts. Protection, journey, transformation. The labyrinth taps into something deep.
The chapter also looks at labyrinths in literature, mythology, and art. Back to the Minotaur myth, but framed as that struggle with our inner beast, the quest for self-knowledge. Theseus finding his way.
Using the myth as an allegory for the psyche.
And in literature, Borges, Kate Moss, using labyrinths to symbolize complexity, choices, destiny, hidden truths.
It's such a potent metaphor for writers exploring those kinds of themes.
And in art, too, conveying spirituality, contemplation, the human experience, always inviting interpretation.
Yeah, its visual power translates across different media.
So the takeaway from this chapter is really the depth of the symbol. It's not just one thing. It resonates on so many levels, personal, cultural, artistic.
Absolutely. It shows how the labyrinth works as this profound symbol of our journey, packed with universal themes, and how art and stories help us explore that richness.
Chapter 4 moves into the practical. Walking the path, the experience of labyrinths, how to actually do it.
Right, getting down to the nitty-gritty.
It talks about approaches, rituals, and meditative practices. Suggests starting by centering yourself, maybe setting an intention.
Good advice for any kind of reflective practice, really. Helps focus the mind.
Yeah, and approaching it mindfully, being aware of the boundary, pausing at the entrance, breathing, walking at your own pace, focusing on each step.
Bringing awareness to the physical sensations, the present moment. Classic mindfulness.
It even mentions using a mantra or prayer while walking, kind of a walking meditation.
Which can help anchor the mind, especially if it tends to wander off.
And rituals, like lighting a candle, pausing for reflection at points, spending time at the center before heading back out.
Little things that could deepen the sense of intention and meaning for the walker.
But what I like is that it stresses there's no single right way. It's adaptable. Your inner path is unique.
That's crucial, isn't it? It avoids dogma. The labyrinth is a tool, not a strict prescription. You use it in the way that serves you.
Then it explores personal reflections and meditative uses, how it helps access deeper consciousness, brings calm, allows introspection.
Yeah, creating that quiet space to just be with yourself. To notice what comes up, feelings, thoughts, challenges.
And potentially leading to insights, realizations. The book suggests journaling before and after.
Which is a great way to capture those fleeting thoughts or feelings. Yeah, to reflect on them later, see patterns, integrate the experience.
And finally, group labyrinth walks. How walking together can build connection, amplify the energy.
There's a different dynamic, isn't there? A shared purpose.
Sharing intentions beforehand, the feeling of safety in numbers, even the simple act of navigating the path with others, passing, making space, mindfully.
That adds a whole other layer, the interpersonal aspect. Learning to be aware of others on the path.
These often end with sharing circles, right? To process the experience together. You see them in retreats, workshops, focusing on healing, community.
It builds that sense of connection, reinforces the shared human experience aspect.
So this chapter really emphasizes the experience itself, the techniques, the personal reflection, the community aspect. It's a whole
A
practice.
sacred journey, as the book puts it, connecting inward and sometimes outward too. A very holistic approach.
Chapter 5, Labyrinths in Sacred Spaces. Now we're looking specifically at religious contexts, how they're integrated into churches, monasteries, temples.
Right, moving beyond the general symbolism into specific religious applications.
They serve as symbols of spirituality, contemplation, inviting that physical and spiritual journey. Shortra comes up again, obviously, as the key example of pilgrimage in stone.
Can't really talk about church labyrinths without Sharsh, can you?
Seems not. And in monasteries, often in gardens, for quiet prayer, reflection on the path to God.
Yeah, providing that dedicated, serene space within the monastic environment.
And in Hindu and Buddhist temples, representing the soul's journey, life, death, rebirth cycles.
So again, adapting the core symbol to fit the specific cosmology and spiritual goals of the tradition.
The chapter then looks at the religious significance across different faiths. Pagan uses connecting to earth cycles, seasons, fertility, the womb of the earth.
Very nature-based cyclical understanding.
Christian uses, historically anyway, focused on the faith journey, penance, prayer, pilgrimage, like we saw with the medieval cathedrals.
The path to God, navigating sin, and finding grace.
Hindu use, like the Chakravyuha, mapping the path through energy centers.
A psycho-spiritual map, almost.
And Buddhist use, representing the path to enlightenment. The turns as challenges, the walking as meditation for awareness, peace.
Cultivating mindfulness through movement.
It's amazing how the same basic form holds such different specific meanings.
It really is. It speaks to the power and flexibility of the archetype.
The chapter finishes with pilgrimages and ceremonial walks, labyrinths as part of actual pilgrimages, acts of devotion, seeking connection or transformation,
Using the physical act of walking as a form of prayer or offering.
and ceremonial walks, maybe with rituals, group intentions, enhancing the spiritual vibe, used in festivals, rites of passage.
Marking transitions, building community within a faith context.
Even today, in retreats or healing ceremonies, often walked in silence for reflection.
Yeah, that element persists, using the structure for focused inner work.
So the conclusion for this chapter seems to be that labyrinths and sacred spaces really bridge different traditions. They offer this common ground for contemplation, divine connection, spiritual growth, and community building.
Exactly. They provide a tangible focus point for those abstract spiritual concepts, grounded in a physical experience within a sacred setting. It's a powerful combination.